Okay, kids, let's talk about studio lit photography. This is where we play with the big boys, right? The big lights, the big lights. I'm not going to go into a lot of time talking about directional light, because we did all that in the theater already, where we really looked at how a subject is affected depending on our perspective and whether it's a single beam of light and where the light is. Instead, we're going to take you through how these studio setups work and just really step by step, because if you've never messed with big lights like this, it's daunting. It is kind of daunting, but if I can do it, anybody can do it. So I'm going to take you through the two basic types of lights that most people use, okay? These lights, believe it or not, they look very similar, but they're actually quite different in how they operate physically. Okay, so this is a light that uses a central power pack. Here's the pack. There it is. It's got all these lights and knobs and switches on top of it. The way that this works is there's 4 ports here, and I'm going to shut this off to be safe. I'm going to pull this out. So there's 4 ports. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can actually see what I'm talking about. All right. This power pack controls all sorts of things. This power pack controls besides delivering power to each of the lights, you plug in each light right here, just like that. Each light has a cord. You plug it in. Okay, besides delivering power, this thing controls how much power flows out of the thing. It controls whether or not modeling lights are on. What's a modeling light? I'll show you. That's a modeling light. Why do they call it a modeling light? Well, see, I can decide how much light that gets. The modeling light is just allowing us to focus. That's all it does. That's all it does. So it doesn't have anything to do with the final exposure when you're using flash. It does not. It is simply to allow us to focus and to show us how the model looks in that light. People get that confused quite a bit. They say, well, your light's off. You can't use that thing, can you? Well, yes, you can. See it firing there? This is a little test button. Sure, you can. You can use it. You can use it with the modeling light on or off. That's all it is. It's a separate thing, okay? Now, this power pack has an advantage. It sits on the floor or on a table. It makes these lights very, very light. They're usually less expensive as well. And it is easy to travel with a kit of these things. Very easy to travel with it. If you want to know the brands that I like and so forth, write me, call me, whatever, and I'll tell you. But in this case, because there's so many different lighting kits, I want to talk about the 2 basic types. What are the disadvantages of a light like this? Well, you're limited, aren't you? If you've got, let's say you have a 4-light set. You plug them in 1, 2, 3, 4 in these different ports. All right, you can never get any farther away from the power pack than the length of your cord, which is often 12 feet, 10 feet. That really limits you. If you want to go outdoors, your lights have to be right there on top of the subject. That's a real limiting factor. But another advantage is if you were to have power or power pack up in the head, boy, it makes it top heavy. And we'll talk about that in a minute. What else is here? Well, just like you would have a dimmer switch on a hallway wall to dial up or dial down the power on a light overhead. Well, this has a dimmer switch as well. And most of these power packs have different ways to adjust the intensity of light. They are allowing you here with toggle switches to go from 500 watt seconds, which is as bright as they do per light, to 250 to 125, right? But on top of that, you can dial them up or down with this little switch right here. These lights also have a tone. Let's see if we can hear it. Oh, there you go. That just tells you that the power pack has fully recharged after dumping all that light and it's ready to go again. But that tone gets a little irritating some people, so we can shut it off. The other thing this light has is the ability to shoot 3 ways actually to fire the lights. So here we go. One is a cord, just a cord that plugs into this port here. It's a long skinny cord, a sync cord if you will, goes into the camera. That's very, very simple, very basic. But then the cord is underfoot and you might trip. So a way that I like doing it better is with a radio trigger. You have a radio trigger on your camera. It sends a signal to this box and it fires the lights. That's a really nice way to do it. The third way is an optical slave. That little thing right there sees light. It sees flash. If there's a sudden change in intensity of light, a flash, it will trigger all the lights that you've got plugged in. So 3 ways to trigger this. with a radio slave, they call it, or a radio trigger, an optical trigger, and just with a good old-fashioned hardwired sync cord. Even though I like using a radio trigger, I never go anywhere without my sync cord, ever. Why? Because electronics break. And that wire, I take 2 backup sync cords actually, that wire enables me to shoot no matter what happens to the electronics. That is a huge deal. So I want to show you what this head actually looks like as well. This is it. It's just a little head. I wrap the cord around it, keep it kind of from getting strung out all over the place. There we go. And it's just little and lightweight. I bet it doesn't even weigh, maybe it weighs a pound. I don't know. It's got the 2 components inside that you can see. The little center thing, you don't want to touch it and get grease on there, or you could cause it to rupture and break it. The little thing in the center is the modeling light. It's just a little tungsten bulb. It's very hot, very bright. And inside there is the flash tube. That's what the burst of bright light that you're going to use to illuminate your subjects is from. Remember, the modeling light is not of consequence in your exposures unless you're shooting a very slow shutter speed. You're not going to be shooting a slow shutter speed much. If you're using flash, that defeats the purpose a little bit. Although you could use the modeling light to create kind of a ghosting effect. I don't do it that often, okay? Simple on-off switch on the back for the modeling light. Otherwise, that's it. Super simple, super light, and not top-heavy at all. All right, let's talk about the other type of light, shall we? Let's talk about a light that has everything in it. This is a really nice light. I think it's better actually than the other light set because of one simple reason. You can move this puppy around because it's got all the goodies up here. It's very heavy because the power pack is up here. All it needs is an electrical cord plug in to feed it power, and you're ready to go. Everything's all in one. Turn it on there. Modeling light here. Dial it down. These things do a lot. We dial up and dial down the power with these, and it brings the modeling light up and down with it. There we go. Test light. Test it. It's got a menu, and I mean, it's a complicated little machine, but you can use it very, very quickly and easily, and it's very, very dependable. So there it is. Same thing as before, really, isn't it? Look, we've got a modeling light in the center and a flash tube around the edge. I've removed the protective glass cover just to show you that because it'd be harder to see. But that's about it. Same basic principle, really. Same thing, except very top heavy, falls over quite easily. And you know what? It's so worth putting up with this. It's far more expensive than the other lights. They're far more expensive, about double the price. But boy, do I like to be able to get these lights apart. And you could light an elephant with these things because you can spread them around. And I have lit elephants with these things, and they're fantastic. The other thing is you're limited to 4 ports on this other power pack. You're limited to 4 lights on that power pack, and you could run multiple power packs. But with these, you could add any number you wanted. You could do this enormously elaborate set. And that's great. They fire with a sync cord, a hard cord if you wanted to, but they also fire with a radio signal. Again, you would mount this little triggering device to the top of your camera, and that sends a signal out and fires all the lights at once, or they can be fired in sequence. They can be programmed to do all sorts of things. They're really quite wonderful, but so heavy, very expensive. It really depends on how serious you want to be. How serious do you want to be about your photography? Only you can answer that because it gets pricey. A head like this, I don't know, on sale, it's about $1,500. So if you have a 4-head set, which is kind of a standard deal, you got $6,000 just in the lights. Well, it's up to you, but man, are they great. The other thing they do well, they create such a powerful burst of light, such a powerful burst that can be of short duration. You can get massive depth of field and freeze action like crazy and do it over and over and over again because you're plugged into the wall. You're not relying on batteries. That's very handy. Now let's talk a little bit also about what goes over the fronts of these things to shape light. Shaping this light is a big deal. It's a very big deal. We have ways of shaping light that, I mean, just everything imaginable. I brought some very simple things. This is called a snoot. a snoot. And all this does is it goes over the front of a light with a bracket or some sort of a ring to secure it. And then it has this little hole, and it basically funnels light into a circle. Kind of an interesting effect, shaping light. But really, one of the main tools anymore for shaping light are grids. So, or grid spots, whatever you want to call them. So this looks like an old car headlight, doesn't it? Well, like a headlight cover off an old car. Well, this is actually a grid, and a very fancy one. I do not carry glass grids because Joel would break glass grids on his very first trip. So let me talk about these grids. These are wonderful because they actually shape light without diminishing light. So the way that they work is there's a series of little stripes in these, and they create different patterns. Some allow the light to flare out very wide, some narrow the beam very, very tightly. It depends on how closely spaced these little grids are to each other. The more common one to use, the thing that I find all over the place, are these. They're honeycomb grids. They're metal, and they come in different, they're labeled in different patterns. This one is the widest. It's about like a bee's honeycomb. It's a 40-degree grid. That means it allows light to go out 40 degrees, no more. Why do we care about that? Well, we care because we don't want light to flare into the lens and go all over the place. We want to control our light. A studio situation is a great place to control everything because you're creating it from scratch. A 40-degree grid, you can really see how big that is. A 30-degree grid, a little bit smaller. Then we've got a 20-degree grid and a 10-degree grid. With these metal grids, you're shaping light by cutting it down, by reducing the amount of light that goes out. You really lose a lot of light with a 10-degree grid. 40-degree grid or bigger, you don't lose as much light. As the grid gets smaller, the beam gets smaller, very focused and concentrated, but you lose a lot of light. And with animals, that's tough to do. With people, no problem. You can park them on a dime. If you're trying to do animals with grids, a little bit tougher. So how do these grids actually work? Very simple, very simple. Your lights, you're going to have to get a holder for your grid. This is a standard reflector, which helps you a little bit. With this, you mount this in like that, slide it in, lock it in place, there it is, and then you just pop this in. It's spring-loaded. Pop it in. This thing's seen a lot of use. And there you go. That is it. So you've got this really nice way of funneling your light out of these very powerful flashes, funnels it into a beam. Very simple, okay? Let's look at this other one. Same thing, different head, a different type of holder. Snap this in place. There you go. And the grid just sits in there like that. Super simple, super easy. All right, so grids. Very beneficial, very worthwhile, and you're going to get them anyway. If you shoot enough, you're going to go towards them anyway because you're going to want to control the light. It took me years to finally break down and start getting grids, finally, but so worth it. Notice the fronts of these lights also. These are grids as well. These are cloth grids that Velcro to the insides of these soft boxes. Just another way of controlling the light, but allowing a very big pattern. Very different than the small grid spots. These allow light to be funneled out, usually no wider than the box if you're fairly close to them. All right, next thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about soft boxes. Usually most studio lights, in fact every one I've ever seen, you have the ability to mount all sorts of light shaping tools to the front of the light. Why would you ever want to just use a light that's straight like this unless you can put something in front of it? Either a diffuser panel or bounce it off a reflector, bounce it off the ceiling. Very seldom do you see somebody just use a straight light head flash without putting a modifier in front of it. So they're very powerful. So in this case, we're just going to screw this on. It's got 3 screws, but I've already lost one of them. That's okay. So there we go. That's the bracket. And you can put all sorts of light shaping tools on it. Big soft box. There it is. We have our light head. We're not afraid to use it. It's got our little adapter ring on it. And we're going to put this right on here. Why use a soft box at all? Well, I want to use it because it softens the light. And I love soft boxes that have a diffusing panel on the front and in the middle. That's double diffusion. Love that. So here we go. This folds up very neatly and easily, packs very easily, very lightweight, and boy, is it wonderful. It really is. Two things I would not do without in life is a soft box like that and a grid to put in front of it. I don't have a grid on this one because I just wanted to show you how it looks. Boy, that's big. Huge, huge, huge. But very lightweight and very easy to use, right? We just want to control the light. We want to funnel it. We don't want it to display everywhere. And I want to soften it. Maybe you like really harsh light in your pictures, and if you do, power to you. But for me, I always want to soften the light as much as I can. And to the front of this, I would add a grid, which is just a piece of cloth that comes out in a checker pattern like this, and it's going to narrow the light into a tighter beam so I can control what I'm doing. I either do that, or I go back and use these holders and put grid spots on, and away we go. Well, we spent a lot of time in the studio with that big, powerful lighting. What next? You know, just because it's called studio lighting doesn't mean we can't go outside the studio. Yes, we can. We're going to take these big monolights, that's where the power is all in the head up top, and they can be spread out, and boy, can we get some great results anywhere. So let's get outside, inside, get them out of the studio for Pete's sake. It's wonderful stuff. Well, let's put these puppies to the test out in the field, shall we? We have our lights, we have our models, we have an old farmhouse, and boy, do we have bad light and a bad background. Holy cow. We're looking almost directly into the sun. It's early afternoon, early-ish. We've got all sorts of trees sticking up back there. It's tough. Everything's backlit and junky and harsh and terrible. Can we tame this situation and make it work? Let's say this is the only time you had to shoot, and you have to shoot this direction because there's other things around you don't want to show. This is the direction. This is the time that you have to shoot. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So we have 3 studio heads or flash heads that each contain their own power pack, and they each contain a wireless receiving device, obviously, to take a signal from this camera and pop and go. Now these things you can program, these are fancy lights. You can program them to basically come up and come down in intensity from a camera or computer. In this case, I'm just setting them to a manual setting because I like manual. I can fuss with things myself. It's very simple. I'm a simple guy. And I've got them pretty much maxed out. They're in soft boxes to soften the light a little bit. Are you guys ready? Here you go. All right, we're gonna try one. It's pretty close. Remember, the shutter doesn't have anything to do with the flash really in terms of adjusting the house lights, the ambient of nature, up and down. The shutter does that for you in a way, you know, but it's not really tied into the flash. They're independently owned and operated. So here we go. So I've increased my shutter from where I was because when the shutter was too slow, I had too much junk in the background. So I went from a 60th to 125th up to 250th, which is the max for this system for this camera right now. And what do you know? I have eliminated all that junk in the background. It's still there. There's a hint of farmhouse, a hint of trees, but it's not overpowering. And what do you know? The models are all lit very, very well, and they stand out with a lot of rich color. Very, very nice. A couple things to watch for in this type of a system. You don't want to use them when they're raining. Ouchie. That's going to cost your pocketbook, and there's a big shock hazard. The other thing is it's often windy outside, and these type of studio flash heads are very heavy because the power pack is up top, right? So they will tip over easily unless you have them on a heavy stand with sandbags or somebody holding each one. And that really, really is painful when you hear the crack of glass when these things fall over. I've had that happen too. What else can I tell you about this setup? You need a lot of extension cords, and also it is simpler than you can imagine. Yes, we're gear intensive here, but these things are such racehorses when it comes to light. They really beat the pants off of small handheld speed lights because you can overpower the sun and you can set them up in any light and get the desired results. And it's very quick and easy to get there because if one model's too bright, you just back the model away from the light. That's it, or move the light. you can ratio or change the intensity of light simply by moving them forward and backwards against the lights. That's it. It's that simple. I don't even need to get up into the head and adjust it down, though I could. So outdoor studio lighting is not a problem. The biggest problem is wind. That's it. Heavy stands, sandbags, or somebody holding each of the lights, you're good to go. Okay, one more. There you go. Perfect. Let's talk about something that's very radical for most of you. It was for me until I got these high-powered lights. Turning daytime into nighttime. Very bright light here on Shannon and Nick, just as bright as can be. She's got long blonde hair and a bright pink dress, and she's just lit up. Can we control this? Can we tame it? The sun's right there, pretty high up still. We've got Nick out of the range of these big high-powered flashes. And we've got Shannon in front of a diffuser. And we don't have anything in front of these flash heads. They're just bare bulbs. And they're going to hit this diffuser and they're going to soften and wash over. This is how a lot of the big-time photographers do their celebrity portraits, because the celebrities are very busy. Maybe they only have 5 minutes at high noon and they're out in the desert outside Las Vegas. And you got to make it work. How do you do it? This is how they do it. This is it. It's about softening the light, but softening light that is so bright it overpowers the sun just for an instant. That's all we need, it's an instant. So we have technical information here. We have a little wireless trigger here. It's going to tell those flashes when to go off. Those flashes are set at just about full power. I think they are at full power. You can just smell the air cooking when they go off. You can certainly hear it cracking. I'm going to be at, to start, I'm going to be at 100th of a second, f/22. And I'm at 100 ISO, 100th of a second, f/22, smallest hole I've got in the lens. Let's see how this looks. Remember, Nick's not going to be affected by anything but shutter speed. Shannon's going to be affected by shutter speed to darken the house lights and the flash effect. All this flash is hitting her. None of it's hitting him right back there. Flash falls off so quickly from just foot by foot. It just falls off like a stone. Here we go. Let's see how this looks again. Okay, we see the driveway down the lane. I'm going to slow it down a little bit to make it look more like daylight. In fact, I'm going to shut the flashes off. And let's do this. Let's try this. Okay, so my normal exposure here, if I was not using flash, is f/20 at a 60th of a second. Okay, that just looks exactly as I'm seeing them. f/20 at a 60th of a second. Now I'm going to turn the flash on. It's going to shout out light. I'm going to lock in that shutter speed at 250th of a second, f/22. Here we go. Lots of light coming your way. Holy cow, we have turned day into night. We have turned day into night. Shannon is lit beautifully. Nick, you can barely see, and it looks like the sun's been down about an hour and a half. So that's great. Now, do we want to turn day into night? I don't know. Maybe there's such thing as a happy medium. And in fact, a lot of the big time photographers out there, they will not turn the house lights all the way to black. They will have it in somewhat of a twilight. So that the goal is to have your subject pop out a little bit, but be softly lit. And the rest of the world is behind that exposure. It's a little less. So all I'm going to do to change this, I'm going to slow my shutter down. Shannon's lit well at f/22 with the flash. I'm going to slow my shutter down. That has nothing to do with the flash. That will not affect the flash. They are not together. They're not hooked together. So I'm going to slow my shutter down from 250 to 125. Look at that. The world's starting to come back. Let's get a little slower. Let's go to an 80th of a second. That's nice. That's about where we need to be. That's really about where we need to be. So Shannon is lit very beautifully. The rest of the world is subdued some, and it's nice. She pops out. The rest of the world is down behind her in terms of exposure, and there you go. This is really kind of a fun thing, to be able to control the light wherever you are. Granted, it takes a bit of gear. It takes a diffuser panel. It takes a couple of these big lights behind the diffuser panel. But imagine being able to control the light no matter what time of day, no matter where you go on the face of the earth. That is amazing. And that's how these types of pictures that you see in magazines all over the place, that's how they're done. So There you go. Takes some gear, but not that difficult. I'm going to critique these pictures we got using studio lighting both with and against the sun out in the countryside near Bennett, Nebraska. Let's just go through these quickly. Our first exposure, not liking it, not feeling it. We've got that diffuser shadow right there. We need to move her out of that because the quality of light is much different. Much different. So now we've moved her aside. Now we're talking. We're getting there. Let's play with the shutter a little bit and knock down the house lights. Let's turn day into night just for fun. We've got a shutter of 160th of a second. Now we're at 250th of a second. Our base exposure coming out of those lights is virtually the same. We haven't changed that. The lights are a little darker here. Probably they just didn't recycle enough. And there we go. Now let's see what else we got. Wow, what did we do there? Why the difference? Why the difference? Well, the difference is we boosted the power on the lights a little bit and we left the shutter the same. Remember, shutter and flash are not tied together in terms of, the shutter does not influence how much light the flash is putting out. They're independently owned and operated. The shutter's controlling the house lights, the ambient light. Let's keep going a little bit. I'm getting towards an exposure I like here. I like this a lot. Still at aperture f22, I'm at 250 of a second, which is as fast as my camera will go with these lights. ISO 100. But I think this is the exposure I like. I want to take the back down. I want the house lights down. I want Nick down. I want Shannon lit well and evenly and out of the harsh light of the sun. She's being shaded by that big diffuser panel, plus we're pumping that light through it. There we go. That's at 125th of a second, f22, ISO 80. And I think that's about where I want my exposure to be in this case. So now we're looking at a situation where we're looking into the sun. Sun's in the west. This is later in the afternoon. We have 3 monolights, each one dedicated to one of the models. We have one here to the right of Vernay, one back there to the right of Cole, and one on the left of Shannon. The beauty of these monolights is this. You can spread them out. They each have their own power pack. They're all triggered independently. Off we go. These people could be scattered all over the yard. You could put 50 monolights out there if you wanted to and light different things, but each monolight's a bit expensive to do that. So off we go. We're talking about just arrangement here and body position. That's all we want to do. Shannon's got her arms out there. She doesn't need both arms out. I just thought, well, we'll just play with this a little bit, see how this looks. Better like this. Much better with her arms down. Much better where they're just looking straight at me. It looks kind of like an ad for a horror film in a way. We wonder what's going on in that house. But here's the problem. Look at this. I see those lights in Vernay's glasses, don't I? And I see my grids on those glasses. How do we fix that? Tilt her head down. If you tilt her head down, that changes the angle enough. I can't see my lights in the glasses anymore. It doesn't even look like she has glass in her eyeglasses. And there you go. Oldest trick in the book. Tilt your head down if you're using flash like that. Get rid of those reflections. And we're basically there. We've got kind of a messy background, but subdued. Our lights bring our subjects up, and we're golden. Well, what have we learned, kids? Get the studio lights out of the studio, please. It's a lot of fun. It's really interesting. You can really alter reality in a way. And it's not done very much. It's a little bit more work, for sure, but so very worth it.